Bring out the carnivorous plants. This Venus flytrap tutorial is going to be split into 4 YouTube-friendly parts. In part 1, I'm going to prepare multiplication media for carnivorous plants and share that protocol with you. In part 2, I'm traveling up to Washington, D.C., and Francisco from Plant Cell Technology is going to show us how to successfully sterilize Venus flytrap explants. In part 3, we'll move underneath the laminar flow hood to establish our sterilized explants in tissue culture. And in part 4, I'll talk about subculturing carnivorous plants and share the protocol for making rooting media. We also filmed a Nepenthes, aka pitcher plant tutorial over on the Plant Cell Technology channel as part of this collab. I'll have that link below in case you want to check it out. Now we can get started. The multiplication media that we use for carnivorous plants is really not that different to what we typically use for houseplants, with just a few differences, which I'll talk about momentarily. To make 1 liter of media, I start with approximately 800 milliliters of distilled water. Normally, to make multiplication media, you would use 4.54 grams of murashige and scooge, but carnivorous plants are used to growing in nutrient-poor soil because they get some of their nutrition from eating bugs, among other things. Look away if you're squeamish. In 3, 2, 1.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
Disgusting. Today we are going to reduce the MS content from full MS to 1/3 of that quantity, which is going to be around 1.51 grams. For this protocol, we're going to use 1 milligram per liter of BAP as our plant growth regulator, which will speed up the multiplication process. I also add 25 grams of sucrose, which is a scientific word for sugar. This is just regular household sugar. I use 3 grams of gelling gum as my gelling agent for this solid media, but alternatively, you could also use 7 or 8 grams of agar instead. I fill the container up to the 1 liter mark, and then I adjust the pH of the media to 5.6. Carnivorous plants tend to like a slightly lower pH compared to the houseplants that I normally work with. Typically, I'm in the 5.7 to 5.8 range. I throw the media in the autoclave to sterilize it, but you could also use a pressure cooker or a microwave at home. And that's it. We have made carnivorous plant multiplication media. I will share the rooting protocol with you later in the video, and now I am off to DC. Bye!
What we have here, this is a spa cleaner. Basically, you put this on your hot tub. This is sodium dichloro. I'm not going to say the rest of the name because I cannot say it myself, but we can have the name somewhere around here. So we are going to make 1 liter of sterilizing agent. So use 1 liter of water, turn on the magnetic stirrer. So I want to measure 0.5 gram using my scale. I just want to add this to my beaker. And we are going to use a polysolvent 20 or twin 20. This is going to be our surfactant. This is going to allow the dichloro, the sterilizing solution, to stick better to the plant material, to the tissue. Well, I use 1-2 drops, and that is plenty for what we need. Now our sterilizing solution is done. We can start taking cuttings, and for that we are going to place the cuttings in one of these jars. So for Venus flytraps, you can use the trap, you can use the leaf. If you're using the leaf, it's recommended to get part of the rhizome. So the rhizome will be, this plant is pretty much almost out of the media, so I want to take it out. But you see that this white part right here, this is the rhizome. So whenever you take the plant, and when doing this, I do this with my hands. We have scissors here, which if you use scissors, you always make sure to clean them with isopropyl alcohol. But I like to do this with my hands because I can just pull them away like that. A couple of these.
I feel guilty pulling this plant apart because I was saying earlier, they feel like, no, it's just a normal plant, but the fact they have little mouths makes them feel more alive.
She was feeling guilty that this plant has, I mean, all plants have feelings, but because this one is actually moving, because it has that movement of the traps, she was feeling more guilty to play with it.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, another thing, we just got this plant, and we were actually very lucky for this. So you know what this is? No. This is actually the flower stalk that the seller actually trimmed. One of the easiest way to get plants, like tissue, not seeds, just the plants, the Venus flytraps in culture, is using the flower stalk.
Oh.
because the flower stalk is much easier to sterilize and you still get plants from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean my scissors, and I want to cut it all the way from the bottom. Cut the flower stalk because we can use this as well. So I just want to cut it into maybe like 4 pieces. And we want to sterilize this. There we go. You can also use the trap. So you can take a couple of the traps like this. Ideally, you want the traps that is the new traps. So the first explants to take are the ones in the center. So you have this new leaf and the little trap. So these are the best to take for explants because they are the cleanest ones. The ones that I have already opened, sometimes they already catch some insects. So those are the hardest ones to sterilize because they already have some plants in there or some insects, some bugs in there. So this is the best explant to take. So I just want to place that in there as well. So let's take and fill up the jar. There we go. Put the cap on. Make sure to always move the entire jar so you also sterilizing the lid and everything else.
Do you leave this on the orbital shaker overnight, or do you just leave it sitting out?
Yes. So we are going to leave this, want to place this in the orbital shaker. We have the orbital shaker out of frame, but it's just over there. It's going to be doing this for hours, for like 24 hours. So tomorrow around this time, we're going to come back. We're going to take these explants and place those in the media. The reason we're doing this way is because the sterilization window for Venus flytraps is super small. So doing a very mild sterilizing solution for a much longer period of time, it really helps you with your success rate.
So the next day we came back and you can see that our explants are still on the orbital shaker and they look great. There's not even that much color change. We're just gonna make some cuts on these explants and I'm filming Francisco do this. In case you can't tell, those aren't my arms. Like you would do normally with pretty much any explant, we cut the ends off of those pieces of explant. I keep saying explant so many times. I'm so sorry. So you can see he's separating the traps from the leaves and then he's cutting the very end of the leaf off, but he's trying to leave that white rhizome tissue that he mentioned earlier when we were actually taking these explants off of the plant. The container that he's holding in his left hand actually contains autoclaved sterile water. And that is what we are using here to actually rinse these explants. And you can see those flower stalk pieces going in last there. So he's just going to give this a shake here to actually get those really, really clean. And you don't need to do this for long, especially since we were using such a low concentration of the sterilizing agent. There's not as much to rinse off as there normally would be if you were using something like 10% bleach. So this is that multiplication media that was made up prior to this experiment. And to put the explants into the multiplication media, you'll see him do this here. I think he's going to start with the traps actually, but you kind of want to sort the containers by the type of explant that you use. Francisco typically does multiple explants in a single container. On my channel, I use those disposable little deli containers for the most part, so I actually usually just do one explant per container, but the first one he just did there, that one contained the traps. And then he's going to use those leaf pieces and also the pieces of the flower stalk in this second container of multiplication media. And like any plant, when you're establishing these in tissue culture, you want the explant to be making good contact with the media, but you don't want it to be completely drowning, submerged in the media. So you can see those are just left right on top there, but still making good contact. So I'm going to close that up. And that's it. After a few months, you should have some good growth in vitro, and you're probably ready to subculture. This is just an example I did for the video, but you can see that some of these are actually probably large enough to acclimate out of tissue culture, but for the sake of the video, we're just subculturing them. So when you move these guys, you just want to separate the clumps, and you can also cut off any dead tissue or pretty much any roots that you see. These guys really don't need roots going into rooting media because they're going to grow new roots anyways. I will put the protocol for the rooting media on the screen so you can see it. It's pretty similar to the media that we used for multiplication. And when you're ready to acclimate these guys, I recommend acclimating them in a mixture of sphagnum moss and perlite, as opposed to fluval stratum, which is what I normally use. And that's it. Easy peasy. Last week, one of my Instagram followers actually messaged me about a story that was happening in their hometown where poachers took a ton of Venus flytraps out of the wild to sell.
Crisco says officers responded to a call last month about 2 people digging for fly traps in Boiling Spring Lakes. They found the suspects at a nearby gas station and looked inside their backpacks.
They harvested over 590 plants illegally.
So I think that just reminds us how important tissue culture actually is to the preservation of our wild spaces. So just try to be mindful of where you're getting your houseplants from, because we don't want to end up harming the environment. Anyways, on a brighter note, thank you to Plant Cell Technology for letting me use your lab space to film the majority of this video. And also thank you to Plant Cell Technology for sponsoring this video. Woof. I just gave a full Oscar speech. Plant Cell Technology is where I buy all of my tissue culture products. It's where I bought pretty much everything that you saw us use in the video, which will all be linked below in case you're interested in trying out this process yourself. If you're looking to build a home tissue culture laboratory, I highly recommend checking out their website. I have a discount code, which is Plants in Jars, which will give you 10% off anything on their website, including the upcoming tissue culture masterclass, which will be online on March 23rd and 24th. I took the in-person version last year and I actually learned a lot, so highly recommend it. It will be linked below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!